Good day, everyone. Welcome to our joint webinar about the NetBrain and Pessler PRTG integration. My name is Karina Sovaka, and I will guide you through this webinar today. Dave Spence, Senior Pre-Sales Engineer at NetBrain Technologies, and Vyacheslav Milavanov, Pre-Sales Engineer at Pessler AG, will introduce you to the RESTful API integration, as well as show you live demos on how both solutions work. Before we start today, I would like to introduce you to a few housekeeping rules. Due to a huge number of participants, you're all muted per default, so we can avoid the background noises. But if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask your questions in our Q&A or chat tabs. And of course, in the end of this webinar, we will have time to answer all of them. This webinar will be also recorded, and we will send you the link to the webinar recording after this session. And last but not least, please do not forget to change to a full screen mode so you don't miss any details. So what's our agenda today? We know that some of you already work with NetBrain or Pessler PRTG or have at least an idea what kind of solutions both companies are offering. Our goal today is that in the end of this webinar, every one of you have a better overview about what NetBrain and Pessler PRTG are. Today, we will not only show you a short live demo for each solution, but also examples for the integration of both in another short software demo. So what's the goal of our webinar today? NetBrain and Pessler are technology partners within the Pessler Uptime Alliance. We combine PRTG monitoring and network automation through the RESTful API integration to greatly simplify day-to-day network management challenges for mutual customers. How does this integration work? Once PRTG detects the error, NetBrain automatically triggers an executable runbook that documents the source of the problem and the cause before the problem is reported to your IT department. This makes it easier for your team to find error sources, and dynamic maps will give you a better view of your entire IT infrastructure. I just mentioned that Pessler and NetBrain are technology partners, and before we continue with the introduction, we would like to know if you have heard about Pessler Uptime Alliance before. And in order to do this, we would like to ask you to participate in a short survey and answer the questions. So I will start the survey right now. Please let us know if you already know about Pessler Uptime Alliance. Just waiting for another few seconds. Some answers are still coming in. Okay, thank you very much. So we see that the majority really don't know about Pessler Uptime Alliance. This is very good. Thank you for your answers. And we would like to change it. And I would like to ask Slava to give you a short overview.
Thank you, Karina. My name is Slava. Well, anyway, I have a longer name, but my colleagues and customers know me as Slava. I'm a senior systems engineer at Pessler, and I'm responsible in the company for pre-sales considerations, for architecture, thinking about sizing, and so on for PRTG. And also I'm responsible for training webinars and live demos. And today, I'm going to spend a couple of words about Uptime Alliance partner program by Pessler. Why is it there and what we're opting for with this program? So the vision, our vision is 100% uptime of the IT infrastructure. And the goal is better customer experience, easiness of operation, thanks to complementary solutions and maximum usability. As with our project, PRTG Network Monitor, we can do a lot. We can monitor everything, but some of the components required for successful uptime and 100% uptime of the IT infrastructure are not included in our product PRTG Network Monitor. That's why we have chosen a line of Uptime Alliance partners, and you may see names well known to you. These are really worldwide successful companies, and we talked today about the company NetBrain. This is our partner, as the PRTG has a very comfortable feature to be incorporated or to be interconnected with the other software. And the NetBrain does the functions, discovering, mapping, automating, solving, which we are not offering with PRTG. Good. About our company. So you may have heard about Pesla, you may have heard about PRTG. If not, just a couple of words. We're a German company based in Nuremberg, our headquarter, which is here been drawn on the previous picture, is located in Nuremberg. We've been founded in 1997. As of today, we count over 300 employees from more than 25 countries. We are 100% owned by founders and employees. So the company Pesla is called after its founder, Dirk Pesla. We count more than 300,000 installations globally, and we serve companies of all sizes and industries, all natures, governmental, educational, transnational companies, so little entrepreneurs. And that gives us a very comfortable position, taking 70% of Fortune 100 enterprise, Fortune 100 listed enterprise worldwide, and counting them to PRTG users. Right. And our product, PRTG Network Monitor, although it's called Network Monitor, or maybe you've heard about it, but we would like to know a little bit more about the knowledge state of PRTG. That's why Karina would start a short survey. And we will find out in a couple of seconds, what do you know about PRTG? Are you using it already? Would like to know more, and so on, so on, so on. So just a couple of seconds more. So do we have any results? And I also see people joining our webinar. That's very good. All right, Karina, what's the result? Hey, I see it. We have plenty of commercial PRTG users, some of the trial users, and some of people who don't monitor at all, or using different monitoring solutions. Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. Okay, thank you. So why do we need monitoring? For those who are using it already with our product or the other, the question is obsolete: measure, inform, alert, analyze, and based on the gathered information, optimize your IT infrastructure. That's the main goal of monitoring. And with our product, PRTG Network Monitor, next one, we're gathering the monitoring, which used to be a brickwork containing of different modules, monitoring of workstations, websites, printers and scanners, firewalls, storage systems, and so on. We are collecting this to one single product, which is able to monitor everything. So actually every aspect of your IT infrastructure, and not only this, we're also able to monitor medical and industrial protocols. So now it's not brickwork any longer. So you may see here a very familiar protocols and terms and some expressions. So although we call us network monitor, we can monitor by far much more. We can monitor memory usage, disk usage, SSH, and so on, uptime, databases, flows. So not only network, by using open and non-proprietary protocols. Okay, and just very short information how would PRTG function, how it works. Very, very important notice here: we're not using any agents. So just for those who's listening to us today, who's planning to roll out the monitoring system, bear in mind with PRTG, you don't have to install anything onto your end objects, onto your endpoints and nodes, because we're working agentless. And installing PRTG, you're getting always these two components, which you see upper left corner, the PRTG core server and sitting on the same system, doesn't matter if it's bare metal or virtual system, sitting on the same system with the core server, it's a local probe. So how does it work? The local probe or any other probes, a bit late about this. The probe is talking to the endpoints using the protocols we've seen before, collecting the metrics, and the local probe is forwarding the information to the core server, which which receives the information, stores it in our own database. So it's not any third-party database like SQL or something like this. This is very own Pessler PRTG database, which is optimized for monitoring. So that's being stored there. The PRTG core server stores this information, is responsible for visualizing of received information, for reporting, and for notifications. We have on board a web server, our own web server, so we can visualize without any additional add-ons. But you should come to the situation where you have more than one network. You have some distributed networks, you have some branch offices in the same building, over the street, next city, or the other continent. This is where the copies of local probe are coming into the game. We call them remote probes. These are only 2 Windows services, and in very near future, also some Linux versions of this. You install those 2 services on any computer in that remote network, in that branch office behind the firewall, bear in mind that. So the protocol traffic takes place between the remote probe and the end nodes behind the firewall. So you don't have to open the huge gates in your firewalls. You only need to open one single port, 23560, TCP 23560. So the traffic between remote probe and the core server requires only one port number, and it's being encrypted by using TLS 1.2. So that means the remote probe collects information behind the firewall. So the protocol traffic is safe in the DMZ, as of me. And then the probe is loading up the information to the core server, which makes its usual tasks like visualizing, notifying, and so on. So you can have as many as 60 or 80 of those probes in your network, so that you can serve many remote and branch offices, remote networks. The remote probe can also be used for load distributing. So even in the same network, you can use many remote probes just to distribute the load. So you can move the excessive sensors per drag and drop from one probe to another. And the probe has also one very nice feature. It can cache the information in case of the connection to the server is broken somehow. So we could have some unstable network in between, or the core server has gone, whatever. So the remote probe will continue monitoring and keep the collected data locally. Or once the connection is reestablished, the remote probe will send the data up to the core server. So no agents. Next one. So thus, with PRTG Network Monitor, you will get a complete IT infrastructure and non-IT infrastructure monitoring, and PRTG will alert you when it discovers the problems or unusual metrics. We'll also have this function. It will visualize your IT environment by using the dashboard. This is also an integrated feature, including the map editor, and it provides you data for optimization via API. You can also pump out the information to any third-party database for later analysis. Now I'd like to show you the live interface. I have my sandbox here open, and I'll show you the PRTG Network Monitor as it works in the daily work. I will not take a lot of time because this webinar is mostly about the interconnectivity between PRTG and NetBrain, but I'd like to spend a couple of words about the interface. So once you have installed the PRTG on your server operational system, you can run automatic discovery. So the system will fill up itself automatically will try to reach the components within its distance, ping them on, and should any component reply, it will go through the procedure, asking different port numbers, sending different protocol requests. So in 95%, PRTG will be able to recognize the devices and applications and group them correctly. So depending on the network size, between 20 minutes and several hours, you will get a functioning interface. And this is a welcome screen of a browser-based version. You can use the browser of your choice. Doesn't matter which operational system you're using. So most importantly, you have a browser, so you can administrate your PRTG. This is one possibility. We also have a desktop client, which is installable software. And we also have the apps for iOS and Android systems. And we also have some widgets for wearables. So should you use the smartphones or the tablets, you can also receive the push messages onto your wearable device, which is also very practical and useful if you have, for example, a shift and some administrator smartphone, so you carry it with you anyway, so you don't have to check the emails. You always get your most actual information per push. In the welcome screen, you can see the overall situation, how many sensors are being used as of today, how many sensors in which state are right now. So some alarms, some down and warning messages. The sensor, as we're not using any agents, we're using this term sensor. Sensor is one aspect of IT infrastructure. So one sensor is, for example, a ping, or one sensor could be a sensor for free hard disk space. One sensor could be a number of open queues in your SQL system. One sensor could also monitor the run trip of your test email, just to check your SMTP or Exchange, and so on. So we're counting sensors. We use them for licensing. So our licensing is based on sensors. So you see the sensors could have different states, down and knowledge, so that administrators have seen them, warning, up and running, which is the best sign ever, post, by dependency, by maintenance window, or manually, unusual behavior, which is an analytical state. That means that the sensor, or actually the end node behind the sensor, behaves itself by an unusual means. And unknown, which is a gray state, is a sensor which doesn't receive proper information. That means maybe the device behind it has gone or it's offline. If we click on the devices, we see here a tree. We maintain a tree view. We maybe maintain a hierarchy. That means you can picture up your organizational structure very easy by using this system. So you always have this core server with a local probe in it. You cannot split this couple. Then you have as many as you want to have to the remote probes, which could be your customer, which could be a department, which should be any remote place. And when you unfold it, you see the groups. The groups can contain the other groups, but they can also contain the systems, and the system will contain a sensor. And this is, as I said, the sensor is the smallest item regarding the licensing, but the sensor could also be broken down into the channels. So it could be at least one channel or up to 50. And as you see, with a very simple command ping, you can get as many as 4 channels, just the ping time, package loss, and some statistical channels for maximum minimum ping time. As you see, this one is divided into 3 different colored areas. That means those evergreen ones don't have any limit set, and this one has 2 limits set, 1 limit for warning state, and the next one is for error state. In this case, should the ping time reach some certain limits, the sensor will change its state and the color. and also send some message. And if you don't want to sit in front of your screen, then simply set up the notification trigger. You can combine many of them, so you can now follow your escalation path and let you inform about the change state. So if the sensor is in a certain state for a certain time, take this or this notification template and inform me via email. If nothing happens after so many seconds, then do your next one. Maybe your email is not working, so take SMS, take MQTT, take Amazon simple network, simple notification system, and so on, so on, so on. We offer very, very, very wide choice of transport for deliver the notification. You can see them here. Account settings and notification templates. You can combine its notification in one template, one or many. You can set up the rights and permission. You can set up the time schedule for using or not using the notification. By the way, we are multi-tenant system, so you can set access rights on every level of every item of your PRTG. You can set all settings once on a core server level and inherit them down to the tree, where you can break this inheritance at any place, at any stage, and insert your own settings. Doesn't matter if it's credentials or SNMP settings or whatsoever. And you see how many transport possibilities do we have here: email, event log, SMS pager, HTTP action, put get, or post, or whatever. You can execute a program or script. You can restart the malfunctioning system if you want to. If you put a proper PowerShell script here, for example, or batch, you can send a syslog message, send as an MP trap. You also can receive them. Amazon, already mentioned that, assign a internal ticket, push, should you have any mobile client, Microsoft Teams, Slack, and MQTT. So we have here a wide variety of the features. You can put your sensors in the libraries. You can create internal ticket. You can pass the information by using API to the external system or receive the comment from external systems with the use of API. You will see here the description of PRTG API extensively here. So you can modify objects within PRTG. You can get historical data. You can get a report, and so on, so on, so on. Reporting function is also very flexible here. So you can set up the report and gather the items to be reported about based on the text, based on status, based on their geographical location, and so on. You can run a report automatically, let it upload, let it send it to you via email. You can customize it with your own logo and so on. And the system is also storing the reports, so you can have a look at this later on. So this is also very practical. And again, also here, you can set up the permissions. So not everyone will be able to run any report. And you can also run a report in a certain security context. The PRTG can be integrated into Active Directory. So you can use, you don't have to maintain two worlds. So you can use your Active Directory groups for assigning the permissions within PRTG. PRTG requires read-only rights in your system. So once you have installed it on your server, you don't need administrator permissions to be able to monitor. And the last feature I would like to spend a couple of words about is the visualizing feature. We call it map. So the map can be as visual, as comprehensive as this one. As you have the map designer on board, so you can upload the background. You can pull your PRTG items from the left pane to here to your field, make it a bit more beautiful with all those icons and tabs and so on. You can insert the external HTML code. You can also get HTML of your map you just created. You can share it with password, without password, a secret key, or use it as an iframe and incorporate it into your corporate website. You can make a map to a homepage of one certain user. So once he's logging in, you will get this map only. And if you set up the rights and permissions in PRTG correctly, you will not be able to do any harm to the areas in PRTG has no relations to this user. So everyone will be able to work with his very own tool and get quickly to the information which he's required to take care of his responsible region. And last feature, this is very, very short overview of PRTG. The last feature we also incorporate into PRTG is a digital signage feature, which we call a map rotation. So you simply mark several maps or dashboards and let them rotate automatically. And you can also decide how often it will be changed in the screen. So if you have one 60-inch or whatsoever screen, you can run your 20 dashboards continuously. And should you notice something unusual or rare or any warning, you can stop at any time, click there, and fix the problem immediately. So, and that brings me to my last point. As I already mentioned, we have a very well-established and very well-developed RESTful API. And with this RESTful API, we are able to incorporate the software products of our partners. And with the help of API, we have a possibility to talk to the NetBrain. So that means if the PRTG Network Monitor discovers any problem, it passes information over to NetBrain, and NetBrain is automatically generating the map over the of the IT infrastructure part concerned, or the whole IT infrastructure. And this is a very nice symbiotical cooperation between those two products, which makes the life of IT administrator easier. And thus, I would like to pass the word back to Karina, because Karina will arrange then the next demo with Dave. Thank you very much. I'll try to ask the questions in the background. Thank you.
Thank you, Slava, for the introduction of the PRTG Network Monitor. So before we introduce NetBrain to you and show you our software in action, we have another small survey for you. We already know who uses PRTG, and now, of course, we would like to know who already knows NetBrain, already works with NetBrain. For this, I will start another short survey, and I would like to ask you to answer those questions. I just wait a few more seconds as the answers are just coming in. Looks good. Thank you very much. So we can see that we have a good mixture of people who already knows NetBrain and works with NetBrain, and as well a lot of people who do not use NetBrain and do not know NetBrain. This is very good to know. And we would like to change it right now. And I would like to ask Dave to give you a short overview. Dave?
Thank you, Karina. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. So thank you for that introduction. So what I want to do now is just have a quick look at the challenges that people have today with network operations and also security operations. So there's always this initiative to move to the latest technology. And in many organizations, the Internet of Things it's exploding. And of course, compliance it's more important than ever. Now, what we have are these very, very complicated environments, but they've actually got quite limited resources in order to achieve the complexity and deal with that. Basically, what we have here is a sort of a resource gap, a gap between the complexity of what you're trying to achieve and the resources that you have at your disposal in order to realize that. Now, what NetBrain is here for is that NetBrain can actually help you So NetBrain can help actually fill that gap and improve the overall effectiveness and efficiencies of the organization. Now, on the next slide, I'm going to explain how NetBrain provides no-code automation to help fill this gap. So, as we know, network incidents and problems are unknown. They're unpredictable. And we do not know what the problem will be facing on any given day as a network engineer. So with or without network automation, solving everyday NetOp tasks, engineers often require configuration, topology, and network information. And these tasks are typically performed using a combination of sort of static documentation, manual, device-by-device telemetry gathering, and sort of a hypothesis-based troubleshooting approach, a sort of a divide and conquer until a root cause is isolated. Now, NetBrain discovers your total network and it constructs, and this is very key, this mathematical data model of your entire network. And it includes all sorts of physical and logical topologies, gathering data and providing detailed views on layer 2, layer 3, MPLS, software defined, and all sorts of different types of technologies. So we track, we baseline, and we analyze literally thousands of data points across your entire network. Items such as CPU, memory, BGP peering, BGP neighbors, QoS, firewall characteristics. All of these are discovered, they're documented. We analyze them using NetBrain's powerful baseline calculations. But the key with all of this is that NetBrain provides you with a big comprehensive view of your entire environment and your network data. And actually, once you've got this, this provides the foundation for quite a flexible, adaptive automation, which can enable you to solve basically your day-to-day network tops. Now, importantly, all of this powers two key technologies of NetBrain. So firstly, we have a dynamic map, which you can see here in the top right. And this is used to abstract the entire network, automating network visibility and acting as the user interface for network automation. And this is why we call it a dynamic map, because it's not static. It's not just like a Visio diagram. You can use this to drive automation. And I'll show you some of that later. Now, the second technology we have is executable runbook automation. And this is used to codify operational knowledge within an organization. So what do we mean by that? Well, as teams receive each outage, as they troubleshoot problems one at a time, their knowledge grows. And you often end up with a real expert who knows everything. You always get these in organizations. This guy who knows more than pretty much everybody else. And these are the people who are working on the network. They're troubleshooting, but all of the tasks they perform to solve a particular problem on the network, that gets codified within the runbook. So the idea here is this write once, execute anywhere. So by doing this, you're starting to codify that knowledge and you're putting it into a tool that everyone can use. And it's this whole combination of NetBrain's data model and this flexible automation technologies that enables adaptive automation. Now, I've worked with a number of companies over the years, and nearly all of them have some form of ticketing system to track their workflows and issues. Now, very importantly here, NetBrain can perform API integrations with those tools so that it can be triggered to perform automated diagnosis. And literally any ticket raised by the ITSM system can be used to call an API within NetBrain using the REST API. And it can say to NetBrain, build a map. Show this path, Mr. NetBrain, from this client to this server. Oh, map all of the devices involved in the data flow. And this enables you to immediately isolate the problem to the very specific devices involved. But what it can also do is it can direct NetBrain to execute a runbook and gather some data around the problem space. So more importantly, it can gather the data right at the time the problem was identified. And if you think about this, quite often a ticket might sit in the queue for hours. And by the time the tier 1 guy gets to open the ticket, the nature of the problem has changed. It could have gone away. But with NetBrain, this data has already been captured, so it's no longer a problem. So this enables the first line engineer to open the ticket and immediately start troubleshooting with the information right there in the ticket. But better than that, he or perhaps a later engineer, he can then go into NetBrain and then go directly within the GUI itself and begin troubleshooting further. We call this interactive automation. And again, I'll show you all of this later. But the fact that the troubleshooting results are all stored on the map enables much better collaboration and sharing of knowledge. So these results can be stored and even triggered again should a similar problem occur. So let's now go and see NetBrain in action. So let me share my screen here. So here you can see on the screen, you can see our NetBrain GUI. And what we've got here is what we've got in front of us here is our map actually within the demo environment. So this is quite a decent sized map, quite a decent sized demo environment. We've got here, we've got a branch over here on the left going, and again, this has got typical equipment, Cisco. It's got some wireless access points and wireless LAN controller. And this is going through a SD-WAN environment over here to a data center. And then the data center, and we're seeing this a lot, as we can see over here on the left, this is very much a bricks and mortar data center. But increasingly, we're seeing things like software defined. We're seeing public cloud being used as well. And so if you think about this from the point of view of visibility, it's harder and harder to actually get the big picture. There's some good point tools out there, but they don't go across everything. What happens if I've got a problem over here? I've got a problem with my client over here, accessing a particular server over here. Which particular devices are involved in the data flow? How do I isolate that? The network's got a problem, but where is it? But NetBrain can actually treat your whole network as one, and it can deal with all of these because it's built the digital twin. And so, for example, just to quickly show you here before I move on, we've got Cisco ACI. We've also got over here an NSX environment, and also we've got the Azure, and we've got the AWS cloud as well. And actually getting visibility into those is actually quite tricky, whilst at the same time, from the same tool, getting your legacy environments. And often you end up with this going from one tool to another to get the information. But with NetBrain, it's dead easy. I'll show you the legacy stuff in a minute, but very quickly, I'd like to show you what we can actually do for the public cloud visibility. So for example, with AWS, often it's quite tricky to understand how does everything fit together. Before even going here, you can see how everything is fitting together here within the network. We can see our AWS environment over here. We've got this MPLS cloud, this AT&T NetBond, and we've also got over here, look, some sort of VPN tunnel going to our data center over here. But actually, in terms of the public cloud itself, you can very easily expand this and see how everything fits together. And this is pretty key, actually, because building something in AWS is very quick. It's very quick. It's very easy. You've got a sort of GUI, you can start adding stuff, you add some EC2 instances, and these things that they can sort of grow like weeds. And you end up with an environment which you don't really understand where everything is, but NetBrain can do that for you. So it's showing VPCs, subnets, EC2s, ENIs. And if you go down here as well, there's a whole range of other information like this NAT gateway and virtual gateway that you can see, internet gateway. So we can get all of that information and visualize that from NetBrain without having to do anything with AWS, all from one central point. And again, we can do the same. Again, I won't actually dig in here, but I'll just quickly show you. You can do this, very much do the same for Azure as well. But the other thing you can do, and this is really helpful, and I hinted at this earlier, what would happen if I had a problem with a particular source talking to a particular destination, and it was across this hybrid infrastructure? So I'm going to show this in quite a bit of detail in a minute, but here's something I prepared earlier, to use the old Blue Peter parlance. So imagine I want to map a path. Now here's some paths that we've got already stored using NetBrain's Application Assurance Manager. So I can actually show a particular map, and the map is going from this particular, the path, sorry, is going from this particular source to this particular destination, just hidden by the pop-up, but there it is. And I can actually draw this path on the map. And so you can see here, the actual path itself. It's going here into a traditional data center. So it's coming into a legacy environment over MPLS. But actually, it originates over here in my Azure cloud. So again, being able to do that, being able to plot exactly that path, which particular components are involved in that, is actually incredibly useful if you're doing troubleshooting. And I wanted to highlight that. And again, if you're doing troubleshooting, if you're trying to solve a problem with a particular application, one of the things which is incredibly useful is being able to map one of these A to B paths. So here's one I prepared earlier. So this is showing you again, this is actually, this particular path actually is from over here. It's going from this particular client all the way through here, and it's popping out here in the virtual environment. But I just drew this separately using the A to B path calculator. And it's showing you how NetBrain calculates these paths. So if you do have a problem with a particular source talking to a particular destination, you can say NetBrain map the path. Now, rather than, I'm going to show you this in a bit more detail as well in a minute, rather than doing a trace route or a simple ping, what NetBrain's doing here is NetBrain is calculating the actual forwarding path. How is traffic routed? If I've got something like SD1, what's going on with things like my VRFs? If I've got checkpoint firewalls or any other firewall, what's going on in terms of policies? If I've got something like an ACI environment, what's going on there? Maybe what's going on with my global endpoint tables? If I've got things such as endpoint groups and VTEPs, what's actually going on? ACI contracts, filter tables, all of that type of information, NetBrain can interrogate, service graph, and it can work out how that traffic is being moved through those different environments. And again, that's incredibly difficult to do with just your legacy tools. And you can use this to do a whole range of different troubleshooting things. So as you can see here, what I've got here, in fact, this will do fine. What I've got here is a map, an A to B path. So I map this from a particular source to a particular destination. Just earlier, while you were listening to the PRTG information, and what's particularly good about this, and again, where NetBrain stands out from things like ping and traceroute, is ping and traceroute don't show you the layer 2 paths, just the layer 3. But if you look here, I can show there's a switch here. Oh, but what if I want to troubleshoot? What if I want to find out if there's any problems going on? Well, from a central point, you can say, NetBrain, what I'd like you to do, please, is I'd like you to actually do some troubleshooting. Run an overall health view. Show me if there are any problems on this particular network. Are there any issues with any of my networking devices? And NetBrain, somebody's asked, I mean, what about servers and things like that? Actually, and yeah, yes, we do. With NetBrain, we don't really look at servers. We're very much a networking we're a networking platform. We look at layer 2 devices like switches. We also look at routers, firewalls, load balancers, wireless LAN controllers, access points, and software-defined versions. We're not really interested in the particular servers, your database servers. There are application performance management tools which can look at that, look at those type of things. So as somebody else mentioned, and this again, I'll come back here briefly. Somebody mentioned, what about alternate paths? Yes, so if you're over here, look, if you've got alternate paths, you can very easily switch between them and you can show them. So here, look, if I've got this, if I've got the right point on the map here, you can see here there's an alternate path here at leaf 4, and you can say, well, actually, I want you, NetBrain, to show me the different paths, show me how it would go through all of these different routes. So you've always got that option here. So let me go back to what I was showing you earlier. So you can very quickly determine, do I have any problems? What's going on with my memory and CPU? Everything looks pretty good, actually. Everything looks fine. I can just click here, and it'll show me a graph of what's been going on. What I can then do, I can say, well, NetBrain, what I'd like you to do, please, is I'd like you to retrieve some live data. Show me, NetBrain, for all of the devices, please. Show me, NetBrain, for all of these devices, please, could you pull the config files, the routing tables, and maybe the app tables, maybe the device information? And NetBrain will now go to these devices and it will pull this information. And again, this is really useful because if this was maybe an environment with, say, ACI or other technologies in, or lots of different vendors, Juniper, F5, Fortinet, Checkpoint, Palo Alto, all of these different types of technologies. If you think about if you were troubleshooting this manually, you'd have to go into them and you have to issue the right commands and pull the information out. But actually with NetBrain, that's all taken care of. NetBrain is going to these devices for you. It's issuing the correct commands. It's then analyzing those commands and it's displaying them. So for example, if I pick this router, I can look at the config file. I can look, if I want to, it's still finishing off, I can look at particular aspects of that. So I could maybe look at the interface. I could maybe look at the interface configuration here. Yeah, so it's just showing me here the configuration of the interfaces, perhaps my routing tables as well. So I can go in and it's just showing me my route tables. And again, I can very quickly do this for any of these devices. And again, if you think about trying to do this without NetBrain, you'd be logging into these devices using maybe SSH, and then you'd be doing this staring and comparing. And quickly, whilst I'm here, what you can also do is you can actually execute CLI commands directly. So if there are some particular CLI commands that you wanted to issue on these devices, like show, IP interface brief, you can run these commands directly on those devices. And again, it won't be applicable here because I don't think that's an applicable command for a firewall or a PC. But for the devices which are applicable, like this router here, you'll get the output. So sometimes you want to do that. And again, rather than having to log on, you can actually do all of this centrally. And this is what I was trying to show earlier. This is showing you, or using the GUI, using your dynamic map as your driver for automation. And you can also do a comparison as well. So if you wanted to say, well, actually, what's changed? So if I wanted to have a look and say, well, actually, what's changed on this from this retrieve live data? Okay, what's changed between then and perhaps the last baseline? So I mentioned earlier, NetBrain on a scheduled basis, NetBrain will go in and it will build this digital twin. So I can go in here and I can use the current data and compare that against the digital twin and see if anything has changed. As you can see here, it's probably best not to pick an end system. But if I pick something like the routers or the any of these routers, actually, the only change we can see here is an ARP table. So there seems to have been some sort of ARP table entry. Something's come and gone in the ARP tables. But you can very quickly see that. And if this was maybe a routing entry or something like that, which had changed, maybe there was a problem with connectivity. By using this technique, you can really drive down the mean time to resolution and solve the problem. One of our customers, in fact, was able to reduce their mean time to resolution from hours down to minutes using this technique, using a range, and you can use this across a range of all different technologies and vendors. So next, let's go and have a look at our integration now with PRTG. And I'll hand you back to Karina. Right, API integration. So let's have a look now at the integration with PRTG. So the key here is this. I suppose there's three ways of looking at our integration with, not just with PRTG actually, but with lots of other systems. But let's focus very much on PRTG for now. So PRTG, we can integrate with third-party systems in a number of different ways actually. Probably though the two key ways that I want to talk about now is the triggered automation, but also the single pane of glass. But the triggered automation, it's all about triggering something before an issue occurs. And we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail next. But the single pane of glass integration, which actually I want to spend quite a bit of time, literally in 2 minutes, showing you. If you think about everything we've done so far and all of the information that we've spoken about, we've looked in a lot of detail at the control plane. And we've said, look, we can show all of this, all of the information that I showed you earlier. We can look at routing tables, we can look at ARP tables, MAC tables, all of that. We can actually go a lot deeper actually and look at MPLS and an incredible amount of detail. But actually, sometimes you want to look at other information. You want to look at traffic. You want to look at maybe packets, or you want to look at NetFlow information. And now all of this is stuff that NetBrain in itself doesn't gather natively. That's PRTG, which does that. And other systems also might have other information that you want to look at. So what we can do is we can talk to PRTG and say, hello, Mr. PRTG, could you display this information on our dynamic maps? And it's using the RESTful API to talk to PRTG and then pull that information back and display that on the map. And for first line engineers and for other employees who don't have access to PRTG, they can now easily access this information when they need it and in the format they need it in, which is on the map. The next use case I want to talk about, and I was hinting at this in the earlier slide, is triggered diagnosis. So this is all about triggering a diagnosis. So there's a couple of ways of doing this actually. The first way is you can say, look, I'm going to set up an alert in PRTG, and on this alert, I want this alert to trigger NetBrain and say, NetBrain, map a path, or map the area that's affected, and then do some work. All the stuff I just showed you earlier, NetBrain, I want you to do that now on that path. And so you're gathering information right at the time that you need it. So, and this is really useful. This gives you less waiting time, fewer escalations, satisfied users, and more time for new topics that bring the company forward. Now, I want to show a demo of this, and I also want to show this, and I'll show this in the demo actually, an alternative way of doing that as well. So let me just show you this here. So the first thing I want to do is show you this map here. So this is a map of our Boston network in our data center. Just a second. Sorry about this. That's better. Right, so this is a map of our Boston data center, which is in our demo environment in America. Now you can see here, we've got a number of components. We've got MPLS Cloud, we've got some routers, DMVP. But the important thing here, we've also got, it's something I should have shown you a little bit more in the previous demo. We've got something called a data view. Now, data views enable us to select particular data and display that on the dynamic map. Now, usually that's data that NetBrain itself has actually gathered natively. But sometimes that can be data from third-party systems. So in this case, we've got a data view, which is gathering information from PRTG. And we can see that here, and we can look at things like ping, uptime. So all the stuff that we were talking about earlier, all of that sensor stuff, we're seeing that on a NetBrain map. So NetBrain is being able to be here and very much be this central repository, this single pane of glass. And in fact, if I go down here, look, to this firewall, and I look at the top talkers, I can actually view the top talkers. Again, this is gathering the information using a data view from this third-party system, from PRTG. And again, when you think about this, this is incredibly useful because it means rather than having to go between all of these different tools, you can get all of this information right within NetBrain. But better than that, if you're an engineer and maybe you have a big team, maybe you don't want everybody logging in directly to PRTG. Maybe you want to give certain people enough information so they can see certain data, but not everything. And this is great. And I often get asked this when I'm talking to customers. Customers will often ask me, Dave, they'll say, you've spoken a lot about control plane information. How does NetBrain show data plane information? How does it show the traffic? I've got a particular problem with a particular application talking to a particular server on this port. There's been a spike in the traffic. How can I show that spike in the traffic on a NetBrain dynamic map? And the answer is through a table like this, which you gather via a PRTG integration or something similar. Now, the next thing I want to show you here is the triggered automation. Now, there's two ways of doing this. So the first way is you could get this triggered automation through directly from PRTG. So this is one way of doing it. So you could say there's a PRTG alert, please trigger NetBrain directly. Now, often in terms of best practices, we say you've got to be slightly careful doing this because you could end up with a lot of, if you like, of false positives, too many triggers. So the other way of doing this, and this is what's happened here and what we've got in our demo lab, is that you've got here a map which has been triggered via ServiceNow. What's actually happened here is that PRTG can trigger ServiceNow. So you can create a ticket automatically using PRTG, and that's what's happened. And then in turn, ServiceNow has then triggered NetBrain. So it's, if you like, 3 steps. So you've got alert in PRTG, followed by trouble ticket in ServiceNow, followed by ServiceNow saying to NetBrain, NetBrain, map this path, map it from this particular source to this particular destination. But the key thing is, however you look at this, this has been mapped at the time the problem occurred. So it's gathered the data, it's captured this right at the specific time. Then better than that, what I can now do is I can say, this is always the problem when Zoom controls go over and you can't actually see, here we go. You can't actually see the tabs in your browser. We can now. So what it's also done, and what I specified when I created this, was I actually created a runbook which was triggered right at the time. So I gathered QoS and other information. So we've got a few here actually. But what I've got here, come on. There we go, this one here. So this particular runbook was also triggered right at the time the ticket was raised. So it called the map and then it triggered the runbook. So what's happened here is everything I was talking about earlier, things like an overall health monitor. So it's checking, is everything okay on the network? Is there anything obvious here? Again, right at the time the problem occurred, and also execute some different various CLI commands. So things like logs from firewalls. What about OSPF, for example? What's going on from an OSPF point of view? And I can very quickly go in here. I can look at things like my OSPF route table just by clicking it, because this is how things were at the time the problem occurred. Same for QoS. It's gathered some QoS information as well. So I can go in, I've got the information here. It's timely. I can look at my service policies. Yeah, I can look at my class maps. This was information gathered at the time, so it's timely. So if it's changed afterwards, by the time let's imagine that by the time somebody's come to look at the problem, it's changed. With triggered automation, it doesn't matter. You've gathered that information as it were when the problem occurred. Whereas without triggered automation, without having this type of integration, you'd be coming in and the situation, the actual original problem would now be different. So I hope you enjoyed those demos. I'm going to hand you back to Karina now.
Thank you, Dave. Can you see my screen? Yes. Okay. Thank you for the introduction. So I hope the live demo of the integration of PRTG and NetBrain has shown you once again what is possible when both software work together. And now I would like to know from you if you could imagine such integration in your company as well. I will start the last survey in order to figure this out. Just a few more seconds before we go to our Q&A. Waiting for some more answers. Sounds great. Thank you very much. So before we answer your questions, we would like to introduce NetBrain Technology as a company as well. Very shortly, NetBrain Technologies is a no-code automation platform that aims to automate all NetOps workflows to reduce time and operating costs, as well as to describe IT resources more efficiently. So with the goal of continuously reducing MTTR, NetBrain supports over 2,300 of the world's largest companies today. And the dynamic maps and executable runbooks, as you already heard, form the heart of the automation platform and are the basis for any problem analysis. This enables NetOps teams in any network, physical, virtual, SDN, SD-WAN, or cloud, to discover, isolate, and fix problems faster and document the knowledge gained for future incidents. NetBrain is an adaptable multi-vendor platform which, through the integration of other network systems, offers a uniform view of all data and continuous transparency in the complex heterogeneous network. So let's go to the Q&A session. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. We already received some questions, so let's start the session now.
So somebody's asked at the top, what is a digital twin? Can I answer this?
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
So the digital twin is it's a really good question, actually. Every night, NetBrain runs what's called a benchmark, and it literally gathers thousands and thousands of metrics, from all of the different devices. And then it uses that, it analyzes that to build up, if you like, a mathematical model of the entire network, an entire topology, layer 2, layer 3, virtual topologies, overlays, underlays, depending on the type of technology you have. So actually all of these maps that you saw in the demo, you can map them and show them directly from that benchmark. And that's really what we mean by a digital twin.
Thank you, Dave. Would you like to answer the next question as well?
Well, at least from PRTG side, PRTG doesn't have the ability to back up configs from devices it discovers. And also, we're not responsible pushing any updates and restore the configs to device if needed. This requires another piece of software. I don't know if Dave can state the same from NetBrain side.
Yeah, NetBrain, as part of the benchmark, NetBrain will back up the configuration to its central database. And that's what we do for all of our devices. It's just standard. And the other thing as well, because I know there'll be security concerns here, NetBrain is inherently on-premise. So that configuration is encrypted and it's on site, so it's safe.
Thank you. And we have another question. Currently, we are using SolarWinds and looking at other options along with the mapping ability. So I think there is not a question, but
no.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on what are the other options. If it's about monitoring and the functions which NetBrain is providing, then this couple is perfect. And the best case to find out is just get the trial, install the proof of concept sandbox, and then just try it out. So it doesn't cost you a penny. So just try it.
Okay. Then we have another question. Is it supporting all vendors, networking devices such as Cisco, Dell, Huawei, Aruba, etc.?
I think I can speak for both of us. Yes.
Yes, I mean, pretty much. From a NetBrain perspective, as long as it's got a CLI or an API, a RESTful API that we can connect to, then yes, we should support that. Particularly for legacy devices, which are nearly CLI, usually if somebody brings in a new device, I mean, the support base is huge, but if it's something new, as long as it's got a CLI that we can access, we can issue commands and then pass the results, should be fine.
Thank you, Dave. Next question is, to test data from point A to point B in a large network, would you have to have some agent probe or reflector on each side?
It depends on the size of the network. I mean, we deal with networks, some of our biggest networks have millions of devices. So we have something called a front server, which connects to the devices. So for smaller networks, I would define a small network as anything with less than 2,000 devices. For a small network, it's everything's on the one server, and the answer is no. But you can, for big devices, you can put a server on that particular branch, and that will gather the data and send it centrally.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Can topology generation be automated with runbooks?
It depends. You can do a bit of that with runbooks, but for primarily the actual generating the topology, that's the job of the system benchmark. Going in there, gathering the information from the devices and then building the topology that way, and also the A to B paths. But yes, you can, it is possible actually to create a runbook and say, oh, but what I want you to do when you map this path is please draw this neighbor as well. It is strictly speaking possible, yes.
How NetBrains identifies a possible route path between A and B? Between A and
yeah, it
B
uses the routing.
sorry.
It uses the folding tables, so things like the routing tables and the MAC tables, that type of stuff, and also policy tables if it's a firewall.
Do you have
it understands the control plane? Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Okay, thanks. Do you have single point support for both services?
You mean I think the PRTG and NetBrain.
And NetBrain, yes, I think, yeah.
Not really, but if you contact one of the both companies, we are able to reroute your request to the proper partner, proper contact on the other side. Again, it depends on what's required, what kind of support is required. Is it technical from PRTG side, or is it other way around? Just write us, talk to us. We will definitely be able to support you.
Thank you, Slava. Do we need to install agent software and service ends, network devices, and MS?
If it's about us, about PRTG, then no, we don't install any agent software. So just if you want to roll out the PRTG in the existing network with the existing infrastructure and untouchable systems, then you're really good to go, as we don't need any agents at the endpoint. So we monitoring our endpoints without touching them actually.
And NetBrain's the same. We don't have agents either.
Okay. How is NetBrain product is being licensed? Oh,
I can answer that. That's easy enough. So there's two main ways. I mean, again, it's something worth talking to a product manager for the details, but fundamentally in two ways. There's two aspects. The first is a node license. So how many network devices? So for the sake of argument, if you've got 100 switches and 100 routers, that's 200 nodes. We also have per seat license as well, and on top of that. So, and that's how many concurrent users. So you create user accounts in NetBrain, it's got role-based access, you can really restrict what different users can do. But actually what really matters from a licensing perspective is how many users can be logged on at the same time. But it's concurrent. So for example, if you had a team of say 15 engineers, but they worked in 3 shifts, a 3-shift rotation, you'd only need 5 seats because you could only possibly have 5 logged in at the same time.
Thank you, Dave. I have another question. Is the CLI command functionality within NetBrain restricted to show commands, or do have the chance to do configuration via these workflows?
Yeah, that's very good. That answers another question as well, actually. There's two answers in that one. So that the answer is normally yes. So normally it is restricted to show commands. However, we have something called the NetBrain change management module, which is really good for doing things like failovers. So we can have a look and see. So no, that's the other question, like testing ISE failovers as well. Absolutely. So what you could do is, if you're a big service provider and you do regular failovers and DR testing, you can use the change management module to actually automate that. To say, what I want to do is I want to fail over from this, and then I want to fail back again. And I want to do a benchmark before and a benchmark afterwards. I want to do a comparison to ensure that the failover did exactly as I expected it to. And you can also then do a path as well to track the path before the failover and then map the path after the failover as well. So hopefully that answered two.
Thank you. The next one is, so do you mean that for larger networks, you need to distribute the computer to individual pullers in the region, or can this deployed in NetBrain's cloud for all the compute to happen there?
You don't exist in the cloud. We're an on-premise solution. So when you install NetBrain, you will install NetBrain on site. So you always do. It's the smaller environments, which like I said is up to 2,000. You'll have an application server and a database server, and that application server will go to all the individual networking devices, just like your network engineer, and it will connect to them, typically using SSH, and gather the information. For really big networks, you probably want to have something called a front server, which is a subset of the application server, if you like, part of its functionality deployed in those individual branches. But you don't inherently need to. If your latency is low to the sites and you've got good bandwidth links, you could theoretically run everything from one server on your data center. Well, two, you've got your database server as well.
Thank you, Dave. How does it interact with VXLAN configuration?
VXLAN,
yes.
it understands VXLAN, so it will show that. So if you've got something like VMware or whatever, or perhaps something like SD-WAN, it understands the configuration and the VXLAN configuration and how they communicate. Oh, it does a range of other stuff as well. So things like service graph with ACI, VRFs, MPLS, all of that, even VPLS, all of that, it understands it. And if you've got internet VPNs as well, or VPNs between different devices, it understands both the overlay and the underlay.
Dave, I think it's another question for you as well. What public cloud vendors does NetBrain support?
Gosh, yes. Currently, we support AWS and Azure. On the roadmap, I hope I'm allowed to tell you this on a public webinar, but yes, on the roadmap is Google Cloud, and that will be coming out fairly soon.
Thank you. So do you have any further questions? I think we had a lot and very interesting questions in the summary questions in the end. We still have a few more minutes, and can answer more if you have any further questions. If not, you can also send us those questions via email anytime, and we'll answer those immediately. Okay, I don't see any new questions coming in. Oh, actually, we have two questions more. Implementation time and time maintaining the product. Is it for NetBrain or PRTG? Maybe both?
Well, let me start with PRTG then. The implementation time depends on the size of the network. You will get a functional system. Oh, that's NetBrain. Anyway, it's very short. It was also very comprehensive, but now passing over to Dave.
Dave, we cannot hear if you're talking.
Sorry. Yes, implementation time. So the key with NetBrain, actually using it is pretty quick, and we've got a very good NetBrain University for learning about using it. So actually, from that point of view, because you've got to think about what NetBrain's there for. So it's NetOps, so it's automating network operations. So it's the time, if you like, is a lot shorter than if you were doing it manually. A lot shorter. That's what we're there for. But in terms of the initial implementation, that actually generally that's the bit which takes the longest. Installing it, discovering all of the devices, fine-tuning, which means adapting NetBrain to your particular environment, because typically you might have lots of different vendors, lots of different versions of firmware perhaps for the same vendor. So by adapting that and getting all of that configured, that's generally what takes the time. Once it's up and running and settled into your network, then it's very lightweight.
Thank you, Dave. Then we have another question about the recording. We will send a recording email to you tomorrow together with the presentation and Q&A session and some questions and answers. So no worries, you will get the recording for your team. We're a small IT department. I will not have any people dedicated 100% running NetBrain. Okay, this was for your previous answer.
But again, it's easy enough. Because the implementation and all of that will typically be done by NetBrain Professional Services, by customer success. So the hard bit you won't have to do, and so so all of it which would actually take the effort, that will be done for you. That's generally part of professional services when we install it.
Okay, thank you very much. So do we have any further questions? Just a few seconds, maybe you're just typing in. Okay, if not, as I said, you can send us your questions via email anytime and we'll help you with those. And we would like to say thank you for your interest in this webinar and wish you a great day.
Thank you very much.